welcome to IDU Talks. My name is Anastasia Lavrina. In this program, we will talk about Syria, the latest developments. Joining me now from Washington is Hamdi Rifai, political analyst. Welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. So the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria was almost unthinkable just a week ago. The situation is changing now very rapidly. What does it mean for Syria, for Syrian people, and what's next for the country?
So there were many proxies fighting in Syria. Now we're down to essentially two areas of Syria. So we've gone from many divisions down to two. So areas west of the Euphrates River, which goes right down almost the middle of Syria, divides one part that is controlled by various rebel factions, as well as Turkey. So Turkey has been involved in this a little bit as well. Then areas east of the Euphrates are areas that are somewhat controlled by the SDF, YPG, PKK. As you know, the PKK is a U.S. Designated terrorist group. It's also designated by Turkey and others. And so Turkey is actively involved in that area as well to take back control of that, as well as various rebel factions that are working with Turkey that control the area along the border of Turkey. In addition to that, what we're seeing are Arab SDF, or we'll say former SDF fighters, and Arab tribal people living in the areas of Deir ez-Zor, which is further down south along the taking back control of Deir ez-Zor and other areas. So those are the areas where oil would come from mostly, etc. So they're taking back the control of those areas. And we're also seeing that agreements or negotiations are taking place to take back some parts of those areas of east of the Euphrates between Syrian rebel forces and the SDF, YPG, PKK.
Well, some experts draw analysis in between of Afghanistan, the events that took place a couple of years ago there, and Syria. How much do you believe the future of Syria depends on the behavior of the newly forming government there? And what are the key factors that will determine its success or failure in stabilizing the country?
It's important to distinguish, and I'm going to be very blunt here. A lot of these people that are comparing Syria to Afghanistan are just people that have been wrong for 13 years, and so now they have to it's almost a bitterness at this point. They have to say, well, we're going to fail. The fact of the matter is you can look on the ground at facts and see what's occurring and see clearly and very, very convincingly that this operation has brought stability. It's brought stability throughout Syria where there was no stability. It's done the exact opposite of what they're claiming. What we're seeing is that in Damascus, there's already a transitional government that's been appointed, and those people are going to then put together a government until an election can be held. The military is already withdrawing from civilian streets, securing the state buildings. Bureaucracies are already being put back to work. The state has been contained and is still functioning in most respects.
Hamdi, in your opinion, what are the expectations of the global powers from the newly established government in Syria? Let's talk more about the position of the United States of America and its expectations.
Well, they've been saying something for a very long time where they have concerns about minorities, and they haven't figured out that it's a new day, that assurances have been given to those minorities. So it's going to take a little bit of time for them to get their messaging correct, see what's happening, understand what's happening. Remember, this was a complete failure of intelligence of the U.S. governments. They thought they understood what was going on in Syria, and then overnight, in a matter of 6 days, it's a completely new Syria. So I think they need to acknowledge that they don't understand what's happening there. And what's happening there is much bigger than we've seen elsewhere. In a matter of 6 days, Syrian people have rejected Russia, rejected Iran, rejected Hezbollah, and brought stability to the streets. So while I certainly understand that there are concerns, those concerns are already being met. Minorities are being protected. The majority is now free. The prisoners have been released. It's really we've also heard American officials say, for example, Donald Trump say, that Syrians should decide Syrians' future. Syria is for Syrians. That's what he's saying. He's saying it's enough of foreign interference in Syria. So also we need to remember that whatever criticisms or complaints we might be hearing, the new Syrian state is all of 2 days old. So when Donald Trump takes office, it will be all of 1 month old. I think we're going to see a very different position from the US government, a position that recognizes that they've been wrong for a very long time.
Well, but to make it clear, Donald Trump, during his first president term, made a decision to withdraw US military troops from Syria, while President Biden is now faced with determining the future US position in the region. Given the changing dynamics, what do you expect from the new administration in terms of US policy on Syria?
Well, Donald Trump doesn't make his foreign policy the way other presidents have made foreign policy. There aren't really any advisors that are telling Donald Trump and giving him intelligence. If you'll recall, during his first term, he rejected intelligence briefings. He didn't even want to receive them. So Donald Trump doesn't make his decisions or his foreign policy direction based on intelligence. So we can put that aside right now. What he does base it on is friendships and connections. And Syrians have incredibly close connections with the president, with the future President Trump, the elected President Trump. So he's already heard what Syrians have to say. We've already whispered in his ear. And he already understands the situation as much as he needs to understand it. And Syrians have told him, we don't want additional foreign interference in Syria. And that's why he issued that statement. So once he takes office, it's very likely he's going to take a very backstep approach to what happens in Syria. And I think it's very clear that any continued support for the SDF, if any, is going to be very limited to ensuring that ISIS cannot become a force yet again. And I think that's fine, because if anybody was a victim of ISIS, it was Syrians. ISIS killed more Syrians than anybody.
Well, in recent years, we have seen a clash of interest between the superpowers when it was about their approach to the situation in Syria. Iran, Turkey, Russia, United States of America, they all had their own interests in the region. Should they expect new disagreements between the superpowers in regards to the Syria in near future?
Certainly, there were four major powers that were involved in controlling Syria prior to the events of the last 6 days. Iran was fighting for Assad to maintain its crescent. Russia, which didn't have much of an influence on the ground, it was mostly fighting from the air. And its interest was mostly to maintain its naval base in Tartus, Syria. That is its only warm water naval base. And frankly, it needs it now more than ever. And then we have Turkey, which we know, of course, it had major national security concerns with the attacks that took place from the PKK, YPG that was in Syria, attacking across its border, building tunnels, etc. And then, of course, the United States, which was fighting ISIS. It's important to note that Russia never fought ISIS. It really did not. Iran never fought ISIS. The SDF worked as a boots-on-the-ground proxy for the U.S. to contain ISIS, but in fact, it was the U.S. air bombing that overwhelmed ISIS, destroyed Raqqa, and really is what had an effect on ISIS. So now these four players are going to be looking for future influence in Syria. But the fact is that Iran was killing Syrians, so it can't really expect to have future influence in Syria. And we've heard statements from the Iranian government to the extent of they will continue with their interests in Syria for the protection of Shiites. So now we know that Iran's interest in Syria is purely a sectarian one and unlikely to receive much support. And I don't think they're going to have a seat at the table, because not only because of their past conduct, but because of their current statements. They continue to express a belligerence and a will contrary to the international community. Russia had started to pull out its S-400 air defense missile air defense system that it had provided to Assad, that was virtually almost never used, because Syrians had already started to take control of the weapons that Russia had supplied to Assad. Now we see that Russia has already pulled out much of its heavy military equipment from the naval base at Tartus, but has continued to hold it. Now, the fact of the matter is we were able to easily bomb that naval base, and we could easily eliminate it. But I think that the HTS that's leading in that area right now isn't interested in a battle. They're interested in creating stability, so they're not going to push Russia out just at this moment. But Russia is going to have a very limited seat at the table, most likely. As for Turkey is going to obviously, it's the winner here. It's the regional power. It's proven itself for a third time in a row that it is able to defeat Russia. So this is really from the smart diplomacy, smart placement of Turkey that it has created its primary position at the table. It's at the head of the table. The U.S. is going to have to really listen and be led by Turkey. So Turkey is going to have a seat at the table. The U.S. will have a limited seat at the table. Russia will have an even less important seat at the table. Iran will not have a voice.
And my last question. After 13 years of civil war in Syria, can we definitely say that it has ended with the fall of Bashar al-Assad? Or are there other factors that need to be considered to declare the end of the civil war?
I feel like we need to correct some language there, because it was never really a civil war. There were proxy battles going on. There was bombing by the state against civilians in Idlib, but there was never at any point a situation where Syrians were fighting Syrians in the sense of we were trying to divide the country or for control of Syrians versus Syrians. It was always Syrians versus Assad, and you see that in the streets of Syria. Even people that were die-hard supporters of Assad, that were giving their lives for Assad, are waving the Syrian independence flag, or what some people call the revolution flag, the flag with the green stripe at the top. So clearly it was never a civil war. That was a bit of a mischaracterization. What we're going to see, I think, in the future is there is going to be lots of attempts at power grabs. There is not a clear power vacuum right now where anyone can step into and say, we are in control other than HTS. And HTS is demonstrating itself to be a very responsible actor in this matter. They're showing that they are willing to transition to civilian government everywhere, and they're doing it very expeditiously. So I think if they continue along that path, we're going to see very minimal fighting. We're going to see very minimal attempts at power grab. What we are going to see is a lot of talk and a lot of debate from Syrians that were outside of Syria, that were refugees, that were the Syrian opposition in exile, trying to create a different vision for Syria. Because clearly HTS is going to appoint people that are more religion-inspired. And the people outside of Syria are going to want people that are more secular. This is a debate that's been going on for many years. And at some point, we're going to find that happy medium where a constitution is created.
Well, Hamdi, thank you. Thank you so much. Just to remind, from Washington, we had Hamdi Rifai, political analyst.
God bless you. Thank you for having me. God bless Azerbaijan. You have a nice day.